Get out of that seat. Claire Bennett froze before she could even turn toward the voice. One gloved hand rested on the black leather beside her, still cold from the November night, while rain whispered against the roof of the carriage. Commander Grant Hayes stood outside the open door with water shining across the shoulders of his dark uniform. He was not angry. Anger Claire understood. His expression was worse. He looked genuinely alarmed. "I am sorry," she said, rising immediately. "I was told this carriage was for attendants." Grant stared past her toward the tall seat beside the window. A silver wolf had been carved into the blackwood headrest, its eyes formed from two pieces of pale moonstone. Claire's stomach tightened. She had seen that symbol throughout the Winter Moon Assembly, above guarded doors, stamped into royal invitations, and embroidered across the banners hanging from the ceremonial estate. The Black Wolf crest belonged to one man, Alpha King Nathaniel Ashford. "Who told you to come here?" Grant asked. Claire opened her mouth, but another voice reached them first. "Claire." Diane Bennett stood beneath the covered walkway nearly 30 feet away, her face pale with disbelief. Beside her, Madeline Royce wore an ivory evening coat over her blue formal gown. Madeline's hand covered her mouth, but her eyes held something that did not look like surprise. Claire noticed it only for a second. Then Grant stepped closer. "Miss Bennett, please leave the carriage now." Claire gathered the skirt of her modest gray dress and moved toward the door. She had spent the entire evening trying not to be noticed. She had arranged flowers after an attendant dropped a tray, carried Diane's wrap when the ballroom became warm, and stood quietly behind Madeline while powerful families introduced daughters to royal officials. Claire had wanted nothing from the gathering except to survive it without embarrassment. Somehow she had managed to fail during the final 5 minutes. Her shoe reached the carriage step. Then the courtyard changed. Conversation stopped. Guards straightened. Several nobles beneath the portico lowered their heads at once. Even Grant stepped back from the carriage and bowed. Claire remained half inside, confused until she heard footsteps crossing the wet stone behind him. Slow, unhurried, certain. She knew who was approaching before she saw him. Nathaniel Ashford emerged beneath the golden carriage lamps wearing a charcoal coat darkened slightly at the shoulders by rain. At 32, the Alpha King looked younger than the severe portraits hanging inside the ceremonial estate, but nothing about his presence felt young. Dark hair framed a controlled, unreadable face. His gray eyes moved from Grant to the open carriage, then settled on Claire. She felt the instinctive pressure of alpha authority around him, but it did not crush her. It made every sound sharper. Rain against stone, horses shifting behind the carriage, her own breathing. Nathan stopped several feet away. Claire stepped down quickly and lowered her gaze. "Your Majesty, I apologize. I was given the wrong directions. I did not know this was your carriage." Silence followed. Claire waited for a reprimand. None came. "Look at me," Nathan said. She slowly raised her eyes. He was studying her, not with anger, but with a concentration that made her more nervous. "You were sitting there?" He indicated the black leather seat. "Yes, Your Majesty." "For how long?" "Maybe 2 minutes." Grant glanced toward Nathan as if those 2 minutes carried some meaning Claire did not understand. Madeline moved closer beneath the portico. "Your Majesty, Claire has never attended a gathering of this importance before. She does not always understand royal customs." Heat rose into Claire's face. She could have corrected her. She could have said Madeline had personally pointed toward this carriage and told her attendants were using it. Instead, Claire looked at Nathan. "The mistake was mine. I should have checked." Something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Interest. "I did not ask whose mistake it was." Claire said nothing. Nathan's gaze moved briefly toward Madeline, who suddenly found the wet courtyard stones fascinating. Then he looked back at Claire. "Get inside." Claire blinked. "Your Majesty?" Grant looked equally surprised. "Sir, that seat is reserved." Nathan did not take his eyes from Claire. "I know what it is reserved for." Claire remained beside the carriage step. "I think it would be better if I found the attendant's coach." "Do you?" There was no mockery in his voice. Somehow that made the question harder. "Yes." Nathan stepped closer and placed one hand against the open carriage door. For the first time, Claire noticed the faint stiffness in his fingers before he curled them against the polished wood. His expression never changed. "Sit down, Miss Bennett." Every face beneath the portico turned toward them. Claire hesitated, then climbed back into the carriage and carefully returned to the black leather seat. Nathan followed. Grant stood outside as though he wanted to object again, but thought better of it. The Alpha King entered, and the carriage seemed suddenly much smaller. Claire expected him to sit across from her. Instead, Nathan lowered himself onto the seat directly beside her. The door closed with a quiet click, shutting out the courtyard, the whispers, and Madeline's stunned expression. For 3 long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the silver wolf carved above Claire's shoulder gave off the faintest thread of pale light, and Nathan turned his head toward it. His calm expression finally changed. The pale light vanished so quickly that Claire wondered whether she had imagined it. Nathan did not seem to share that doubt. His gray eyes remained fixed on the silver wolf above her shoulder long after the carving returned to ordinary metal. Outside, Commander Grant Hayes gave a quiet instruction, and the carriage began moving. Hooves struck the rain-darkened road in a steady rhythm. Claire folded her hands in her lap and tried not to notice how little space separated her from the Alpha King. She had spent most of the evening making herself useful enough to justify being there and invisible enough not to embarrass Diane. That balance had defined much of her life. After Claire's mother died, Diane had taken responsibility for her household and made expectations painfully simple. Be grateful. Be useful. Do not mistake an invitation extended to the family for an invitation meant for you. Claire had become excellent at anticipating what other people needed. She remembered coats before anyone asked. She noticed empty glasses, crooked flowers, nervous children, tired servants. People praised her manners when they noticed her at all. Tonight had been no different. While Madeline Royce moved through the winter moon assembly beneath crystal chandeliers, accepting compliments and introductions from high alpha families, Claire had spent 20 minutes helping an overwhelmed attendant replace place cards after a seating arrangement changed. Madeline had found her afterward and smiled with practiced sweetness. "You always look more comfortable working than attending," she had said. Claire had pretended not to hear the insult. She usually did. Silence ended things faster. Now silence felt impossible. Nathan sat beside her with one bare hand resting against his knee. The fingers were slightly rigid. Claire remembered seeing the same stiffness when he touched the carriage door. She looked away before he caught her staring. "You did not answer her," he said. Claire turned. "Who?" "Miss Royce." His voice was quieter inside the carriage, stripped of the ceremonial weight it carried outside. "She suggested you do not understand royal customs." Claire watched rain gather into silver trails across the window. "I understood enough to know arguing in front of you would not improve the situation." "That is not what I asked." Claire almost smiled. "You seem to say that often." Nathan's eyebrow lifted slightly. She immediately regretted the remark, but he did not appear offended. "And you seem practiced at answering questions without answering them." "It is useful." "For an Omega?" Claire looked at him. The question contained no contempt, only observation. "For someone who lives around people who prefer agreement." Nathan considered that. "Diane Bennett." Claire's fingers tightened together. "You know her?" "I know every household invited tonight." "That sounds exhausting." For the first time, something almost warm touched his expression. "It is." Claire looked down before he could see her surprise. Most stories about Nathan Ashford described a ruler made entirely of winter. They said Omegas could barely remain in the same room with him. They said his wolf reacted badly to prolonged proximity and that royal advisors had stopped arranging introductions years ago. Yet Claire felt no panic beyond the perfectly reasonable anxiety of sitting beside a king after accidentally violating royal protocol. Nathan seemed to notice the same thing. "How do you feel?" he asked. "At the moment?" "Yes." "Confused." "Anything else?" Claire thought carefully. "Embarrassed." "Physically?" She frowned. "Cold. My shoes are wet." His gaze sharpened. "No dizziness?" "No." "Pressure in your chest?" "No." "Difficulty breathing?" Claire stared at him. "Should I be having difficulty breathing?" Nathan leaned back, his attention shifting toward the dark window. "Most Omegas do when they remain this close to me." Claire waited for him to explain. He did not. "Then perhaps I am unusually stubborn." "Perhaps." The carriage turned onto a forest road, leaving the lights of the ceremonial estate behind. Pines rose on both sides, their wet branches catching the lantern glow as the convoy passed. Claire glanced backward through the small rear window. Diane and Madeline would be traveling with the guest coaches. She wondered what story Madeline was already preparing. Nathan spoke again. She directed you to this carriage. Claire became still. I did not say that. You did not need to. Then why ask me earlier? I wanted to see whether you would tell me. Claire looked at him. And because I did not. You protected someone who had just embarrassed you. I protected myself from becoming part of a larger argument. Nathan's gaze stayed on her. Is there a difference? A very large one when you have to go home with the person afterward. The answer left her before caution could stop it. Nathan's expression changed. The interest disappeared, replaced by something quieter. Understanding, perhaps. Claire wished she could take the words back. Instead, she turned toward the window. A gust of wind pushed rain against the glass. The carriage rolled over a shallow rut, shifting them both slightly. Claire reached for the armrest to steady herself. Her fingers brushed Nathan's hand. Warmth moved instantly through her palm. Nathan inhaled sharply. Claire pulled away. I am sorry. He did not answer. His attention was on his right hand. The stiffness was gone. Every finger rested loose and natural against his knee. Claire saw the difference immediately. Nathan slowly opened and closed his hand, once, then again. Your Majesty? His eyes lifted to hers. For the first time since entering the carriage, the Alpha King looked genuinely unsettled. That has not happened in 6 years. Claire stared at Nathan's hand, uncertain what frightened her more, the fact that something had changed or the fact that she had caused it. His fingers moved without resistance now, opening and closing with an ease that seemed ordinary until she remembered the stiffness he had been hiding only moments earlier. 6 years? She asked. Nathan lowered his hand. That is when it began. The carriage continued through the forest, its lanterns casting brief amber streaks across wet pine trunks. Claire waited, but Nathan offered nothing more. He had the remarkable ability to make silence feel like a locked door. Is it an illness? She finally asked. The royal physicians called it several things. That does not answer the question. His gray eyes shifted toward her. Claire immediately wondered when she had become comfortable enough to point that out to an Alpha King. Nathan seemed to wonder the same thing. No diagnosis explained it, he said. It begins in my hands. Sometimes it spreads through my shoulders. The physical discomfort is manageable. Something in his tone suggested the rest was not. Claire remembered the stories. Omegas becoming dizzy near him. Introductions ending after minutes. A king who had stopped allowing women into his private carriage. And your wolf. Nathan became very still. Claire almost apologized, but he answered. Restless. One word, carefully chosen. Around Omegas? Usually. But not around me. No. Claire looked through the window, suddenly aware of the impossible intimacy of their conversation. Less than an hour ago, she had been straightening place cards while Madeline discussed which dress made her look most suitable for royal attention. Now the man at the center of those ambitions was sitting beside Claire, studying her as though she were the mystery. Maybe it was coincidence, she said. Nathan extended his right hand between them. Then test it. Claire looked at his open palm. You make that sound remarkably simple. It is a hand, Miss Bennet. It belongs to a king. At present, it is still a hand. Despite herself, Claire smiled. The expression disappeared when she noticed Nathan watching it. She hesitated, then placed 2 fingers lightly against his palm. Warmth moved through her again. Not heat exactly. More like the sensation of stepping into sunlight after standing in shade. Nathan's shoulders loosened almost imperceptibly. His breathing deepened. Claire felt something else too. A quietness settling through the carriage that had nothing to do with the rain. Nathan closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the guarded distance had returned, but not completely. What happened? Claire asked. My wolf went silent. She pulled her hand away. Nathan's fingers remained relaxed for several seconds, then slowly began to stiffen again. Neither of them spoke. Claire's gaze drifted toward the silver wolf carved above the seat. Is that why nobody rides here? Nathan followed her eyes. Partly. What is the other part? His jaw tightened. That seat has not belonged to me for a very long time. Claire frowned. But Commander Hayes called it reserved. It is. For whom? Before Nathan could answer, the carriage slowed. A call passed along the convoy outside. Horses shifted, and the wheels came to a gradual stop. Nathan opened the door before anyone reached them. Cold air rushed inside, carrying the smell of rain and pine. Commander Hayes approached on horseback. A tree came down across the road. Your Majesty. The ground is too soft to move it tonight without equipment. We can take the north route. but it adds approximately 45 minutes. Nathan glanced toward Claire. Take the north route. Grant nodded and turned away. Claire looked past him toward the line of stopped carriages. Lanterns moved between horses while attendants hurried to secure luggage against the rain. Near the rear supply coach, a young attendant struggled alone with a loose canvas cover. A leather case slipped from beneath it and landed in the mud. The boy crouched quickly, trying to lift the case while keeping the canvas from blowing loose again. Two older servants passed without noticing. Claire was already reaching for the door. "Where are you going?" Nathan asked. "He needs help. There are attendants for that." Claire looked at him. "He is the attendant." She stepped down into the rain before Nathan could answer. The cold reached through her dress immediately. She crossed the roadside, lifted the muddy case, and held the canvas while the boy secured its straps. "Thank you, miss," he said, embarrassed. "I almost had it." "Then we will say I arrived just in time to take half the credit." The boy laughed. Claire handed him the case and turned back. Nathan stood beside the royal carriage watching her. He had followed her into the rain without an umbrella. His expression was unreadable, but something about his attention felt different now. Not curiosity about what she could do for him. Curiosity about who she was when she believed nobody important was watching. Claire approached. Nathan extended his hand to help her onto the carriage step. She looked at it for half a heartbeat, then placed her palm in his. The moment their skin touched, the silver wolf on the carriage door began to glow. The glow spread beneath Claire's palm before she could pull her hand away. It traveled across the silver wolf in thin lines of pale light, tracing the carved ears, muzzle, and eyes until the entire crest shone against the rain-darkened carriage door. The young attendant beside the supply coach stopped moving. Commander Grant Hayes turned in his saddle. Even the horses seemed quieter beneath the steady rain. Claire released Nathan's hand. The light remained. "I did not do that," she whispered. Nathan stared at the crest with an expression she had not seen before. Not surprise. Recognition. "Your Majesty?" Grant dismounted and approached slowly. His eyes moved from the glowing wolf to Claire. "Is that what I think it is?" Nathan's voice became controlled again. "Get the convoy moving." Grant hesitated. "Sir." "Now." The command was quiet, but everyone nearby immediately returned to work. Claire climbed into the carriage, suddenly grateful for the closed space. Nathan followed and shut the door. Outside, the convoy began turning toward the north road. Inside, Claire watched water drip from the hem of her gray dress onto the floor. "You know what happened." Nathan removed his wet coat and placed it across the opposite seat. "I know what the old records claim happened." "That is not the same answer." "No." Claire waited. Nathan looked toward the black leather seat beneath her. "You asked who that seat was reserved for." Claire's stomach tightened. "Yes. My mother." The words changed the air between them. Claire looked down at the seat as if it might suddenly object to her presence. "Your mother sat here?" "Queen Eleanor Ashford used this carriage for 19 years. After she died, my father ordered it sealed." Claire immediately stood. "Then I should not be sitting here." Nathan caught the edge of the seat with one hand, not touching her. "Claire." It was the first time he had used her first name. She stopped. "Sit." "Your Majesty, if this belonged to your mother, I have already been disrespectful enough for one evening." "You did not know." "I know now." Nathan studied her for a moment. "The seat was never sacred because my mother used it. It mattered because of what happened whenever someone else tried." Claire remained standing. "What happened?" "Nothing." She frowned. Nathan continued. "That was the problem. After my mother's death, advisors searched the old royal archives. They believed the carriage might respond to another Omega one day. Women from powerful families were invited to sit here under controlled circumstances." Claire thought of the silver light. "And it never responded." "Not once." "How many women?" Nathan's mouth tightened. "Enough that I ended the practice when I became king." Claire slowly sat again. "Why?" "Because people stopped treating them like people. Every invitation became a test. Every disappointed family blamed its daughter. Every ambitious household believed one more attempt might produce a queen." His eyes moved toward the window. "I wanted no part of it." Claire remembered Madeline spending hours choosing jewelry for the gathering. Diane correcting Claire whenever she stood too close to important guests. A world that could turn a seat into a measure of a woman's worth suddenly seemed very believable. Then why keep the carriage? "It belonged to my mother." That answer needed no explanation. Claire touched the silver crescent pin at her collar, the only thing she still owned that had belonged to hers. Nathan noticed. Your mother? Claire nodded. She wore it every day. What was her name? Elizabeth Bennet. Nathan's gaze rested briefly on the crescent. Was Bennet her family name? Claire shook her head. I do not know. She never spoke much about her childhood. The carriage rocked gently as it turned onto the north road. Claire looked toward the glowing crest. Its light had begun to fade, but one thin silver line remained. If this has not happened since your mother died, what does it mean? I do not know. That is difficult to believe. Nathan looked almost amused. Kings are allowed not to know things. Are people allowed to tell them that? Rarely. Claire smiled despite herself. Nathan's expression softened for a moment. Then his right hand tightened again. She noticed immediately. The stiffness had returned. He flexed his fingers once, concealing the movement against his knee. Claire looked from his hand to the crest. Maybe the two things are connected. Nathan did not dismiss the possibility. Perhaps. And perhaps touching me only helped because I was sitting here. There is one way to test that. Claire understood before he finished. She hesitated, then extended her hand. Nathan did not take it. Only if you choose to, he said. The words surprised her more than the magic had. Claire placed her hand over his. His fingers relaxed almost instantly. At the same moment, the final silver line on the crest brightened and traveled upward along the carriage wall. It crossed the blackwood paneling like moonlight moving across water, then stopped directly behind Claire's seat. A hidden symbol appeared in the wood. Not a wolf. A crescent moon. Nathan went completely still. Claire touched the silver pin at her collar. The two symbols were identical. Nathan, she whispered, forgetting his title. His eyes remained fixed on the crescent. My mother called that the Moonwarden mark. Claire's breath caught. What is a Moonwarden? Nathan finally looked at her. A bloodline that disappeared 22 years ago. 22 years. Claire repeated the number silently while the carriage moved deeper into the rain-dark forest. She was 23. Close enough to make coincidence uncomfortable, but not close enough to explain anything. The crescent behind her seat had faded back into the blackwood paneling, leaving only the silver pin at her collar as proof that the two symbols had ever matched. You said the bloodline disappeared, she said. Nathan nodded. From royal records. People do not simply disappear. Records can. Claire watched him carefully. That sounds like experience. Nathan looked toward the window. My mother spoke about the Moonwardens when I was young. Never as servants. Never as subjects. She called them balance keepers. Balance between what? His right hand remained relaxed beneath hers, and Claire suddenly realized they were still touching. She withdrew her hand gently. The stiffness did not return immediately. Nathan noticed, but made no attempt to stop her. Between alpha power and the wolf carrying it, he said. The oldest Blackwood rulers were stronger than most alphas. That strength came with consequences. Moonwarden Omegas were said to calm what authority could not control. Claire looked down at her hands. By touching them, sometimes, the records are incomplete. Convenient. Frustrating, Nathan corrected. Claire almost smiled, but the thought of her mother stopped her. Elizabeth Bennet had been quiet about her past. Claire remembered asking once why they had no grandparents to visit at Christmas. Elizabeth had kissed her forehead and said some families were safer remembered than found. At 9 years old, Claire had accepted the answer. At 23, sitting beneath a hidden crescent in a royal carriage, she heard it differently. If my mother was connected to them, why would she hide it? Perhaps she was protecting you. From what? Nathan's expression hardened slightly. From people who would see what you can do before they saw who you are. The answer struck deeper than Claire expected. She thought of Madeline, of Diane, of the women Nathan said had once been tested in this carriage as though royal approval could measure their worth. You ended those tests. Yes. Even though finding a Moonwarden might have helped you? Nathan looked at his hand. Especially then. Claire waited. My father continued the search after my mother died, he said. He believed restoring the old balance would protect the crown. Families arrived offering daughters because they wanted proximity to royal power. Some women came willingly. Others clearly did not. His jaw tightened. When I inherited the throne, I closed the records and stopped the invitations. How old were you? 26. 6 years ago. Claire looked at his fingers. The same year this started. Nathan met her eyes. Yes. That coincidence felt even less accidental. The carriage slowed again, but this time lantern light appeared through the trees ahead. A large stone residence emerged beyond iron gates, quieter and less ornate than the ceremonial estate they had left behind. Warm windows glowed through the rain. "Where are we?" Claire asked. "My private residence." She turned toward him. "I thought we were returning to the palace." "The building you attended tonight is used for ceremonies, councils, and public gatherings. I do not live there." Claire stared at the approaching house. "And everyone else?" "Guest coaches will follow." Relief came first, then apprehension. Diane and Madeline would arrive soon. Whatever strange protection this carriage had given Claire would disappear the moment the doors opened. Nathan seemed to read something in her expression. "You were worried about going home with them." "I did not say that." "You did not need to." Claire looked away. "Diane gave me a home after my mother died. I owe her gratitude." "Gratitude and obedience are not the same thing." Claire's eyes returned to him. "That is easy for a king to say." "No." His voice became quieter. "It is easy for a king to confuse the two." The carriage stopped beneath a covered entrance. Before the door opened, Nathan spoke again. "You do not owe me anything because your presence helps me." Claire frowned. "I never said I did. I am saying it before anyone else has the opportunity to tell you otherwise." Commander Grant opened the door. Nathan stepped down first, then turned and offered Claire his hand. She hesitated, not because she feared the strange warmth anymore, but because dozens of people could see them beneath the entrance lamps. Nathan waited without moving closer. Claire placed her hand in his by choice. The moment her shoe touched the stone, the silver wolf on the carriage glowed again. A second carriage had just stopped behind them. Madeline stepped out beneath an attendant's umbrella and saw everything. Her expression changed instantly. "That cannot be," she whispered. Nathan heard her. So did Claire. Madeline's gaze dropped to the crescent pin at Claire's collar, and for one brief second, fear replaced jealousy. Claire felt Nathan's attention sharpen beside her. "You recognize it," he said. Madeline recovered too late. "Recognize what?" Claire touched the pin. Nathan's voice remained calm. "The Moonwarden crescent." Diane emerged from the carriage behind Madeline and went completely still. Claire looked from one woman to the other. Neither appeared confused. That was when she understood the worst part was not that her mother had hidden something from her. It was that the people who raised her might have known exactly what it was. Claire did not ask Diane whether she knew. She watched her face instead. Diane's lips parted, then closed. Her eyes moved from the silver crescent at Claire's collar to Nathan, calculating what could safely be said in front of him. Claire had seen that expression countless times across dinner tables and formal gatherings. It was the look Diane wore when deciding which version of the truth would cause the least inconvenience. Tonight, Claire could not tolerate another version. "How long?" she asked. Diane gathered her coat around herself. "Claire, you are cold. We should discuss this." Inside, "How long have you known what this symbol means?" Rain whispered beyond the covered entrance. Madeline stood beside her mother with unusual stillness. Commander Grant remained near the carriage, deliberately looking elsewhere while hearing everything. Diane finally sighed. "Your mother asked me never to discuss her family." "That was not my question." Claire heard Nathan shift beside her, but he did not intervene. She was grateful for that. Diane looked older beneath the yellow entrance lamps. "Elizabeth told me about the Moonwardens shortly before she died." Claire's fingers closed around the crescent pin. "I was 11. You were a child. I stopped being a child years ago, and nothing good would have come from telling you." Claire glanced at Madeline. She knew. Diane hesitated. That hesitation answered first. Madeline overheard a conversation several years ago. Madeline lifted her chin. "I knew there was an old family story. I did not know it was real." Nathan's gaze settled on her. "Yet you recognized the crescent immediately." "I have seen drawings." "Where?" Madeline looked toward Diane. Claire felt something inside her become unexpectedly calm. She had spent years assuming Madeline's confidence came from knowing exactly where she belonged. Now Claire realized some of it came from knowing where Claire had been taught she did not. "You sent me to the carriage because of the symbol," Claire said. "No." Madeline answered too quickly. "You told me the attendants were using the third carriage." "I was mistaken." Commander Grant spoke without turning around. "The royal carriage was first in line when Miss Bennet entered it." Madeline's face tightened. Claire remembered the courtyard, the rain, Madeline pointing with one gloved finger. She had trusted her because questioning directions would have created another small scene, and Claire had spent half her life avoiding scenes. You knew which carriage it was. Madeline looked directly at her. I knew it was royal. I thought Commander Hayes would stop you before you sat down. Why? Madeline's composure cracked at the edges. Because I wanted you to understand that you cannot wander into every place simply because people are too polite to tell you that you do not belong there. The words were familiar enough that Claire almost felt nothing. Almost. Diane whispered Madeline's name in warning. Nathan remained silent. Claire understood why. He was waiting to see what she would do when power stood beside her and revenge was suddenly easy. Did you know the carriage might respond to me? Claire asked. Madeline shook her head. Of course not. If I had believed that old story, I would never have sent you near it. There it was. Not remorse. Regret over the result. Claire looked at Diane. And you? Diane lowered her voice. Your mother made me promise to keep you away from the royal household. Nathan's expression sharpened. Why? She believed the Moonwarden search had become dangerous for the women involved. The search ended 6 years ago, Nathan said. Diane looked surprised. We did not know. Claire did the arithmetic. Elizabeth had died 12 years ago, long before Nathan became king. Her mother had hidden the truth during the reign of Nathan's father. That distinction mattered. My mother was protecting me from the crown, Claire said. Nathan met her eyes. From what the crown was then. He did not defend his family. He did not ask her to trust what it had become. Claire appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. The residence doors opened behind them, spilling warmth across the stone. An older woman with silver-streaked hair approached in a dark green dress. She stopped when she saw Claire's pin. Her hand rose slowly to her chest. Elizabeth. Claire's breath caught. You knew my mother? The woman looked at Nathan. Your Majesty, where did you find her? She found my carriage. Something almost like disbelief crossed the woman's face. Nathan turned toward Claire. This is Lady Miriam Ashford, my mother's younger sister. Miriam stepped closer, her eyes fixed on Claire. May I see the pin? Claire hesitated, then lifted the crescent without removing it. Miriam examined the tiny engraving along its edge. Her face changed. This is not merely a Moonwarden emblem. Diane became pale. Claire noticed. What is it? Miriam looked toward her. A key mark. Nathan frowned. To what? Miriam glanced through the open doors toward the oldest wing of the residence. Your mother left something here 23 years ago. Queen Eleanor ordered the room sealed and said it could only be opened if Elizabeth returned willingly. Claire's heart began beating harder. She never returned. No. Miriam's eyes dropped again to the crescent. But she left instructions for someone who might. Claire touched the pin. For me. Miriam nodded. Diane whispered. Claire, you do not have to do this tonight. Claire turned toward the woman who had spent 12 years deciding which truth she could handle. Then she looked at Madeline, who had tried to teach her where she belonged, and finally at Nathan, who had done something neither of them had done. He had waited. I want to see the room. Nathan inclined his head. Then we will see it. Miriam led them inside. They crossed the warm entrance hall and entered a narrow corridor lined with old portraits. Claire had taken fewer than 20 steps when she stopped. On the wall ahead hung a painting of Queen Eleanor beside a young woman wearing a silver crescent at her throat. Claire knew that face. She had seen it smiling above birthday cakes, reading beside winter windows, and growing thinner during the final months of illness. Her mother looked no older than 20 in the portrait. Beneath the frame, a small brass plate carried a name Claire had never seen before. Elizabeth Vale, last keeper of the Moonwarden house. Claire read the brass plate twice before the name became real. Elizabeth Vale, not Elizabeth Bennet. Not the quiet woman who had packed school lunches, repaired loose buttons, and taught Claire to leave porch lights on for people coming home late. Last keeper of the Moonwarden house. Claire lifted her eyes to the portrait. Her mother stood beside Queen Eleanor with one hand resting on the back of a carved wooden chair, her expression calm but unmistakably confident. Claire barely recognized that confidence. By the time she had been old enough to remember Elizabeth clearly, her mother had lived carefully, avoiding questions about relatives, childhood, and anything. That happened before Claire was born. Why Vale? Claire asked. Miriam stopped beside her. It was her family name. Claire turned toward Diane. You knew that too. Diane looked down. Yes. One small word erased another piece of the life Claire thought she understood. Nathan remained several feet away, giving her space. She was beginning to notice that about him. For a man whose title allowed him to command almost everyone around him, he seemed unusually careful about moments that belonged to someone else. Claire faced Miriam again. What did last keeper mean? Miriam looked toward the portrait. The Moonwardens were never a royal family. They held no throne and commanded no territory. Their purpose was older than those things. When unusually powerful alpha rulers struggled to separate their own judgment from the instincts of their wolves, Moonwarden Omegas could help restore balance. Like what happened in the carriage. Possibly. Miriam's gaze moved toward Nathan's right hand. Queen Eleanor believed the ability had become rare even within the veil line. Claire touched her crescent pin. And my mother had it. Yes. Nathan's expression changed slightly. She helped my mother. Miriam nodded. For years. Claire looked between them. Then why did she leave? Miriam's face tightened with an old sadness. Because your father believed a gift to the crown belonged to the crown. Nathan went still. Claire understood without needing the rest explained. Your father? She asked him. King William, Nathan said quietly. No defense. No softened language. After my mother's health began failing, he became afraid of what would happen to the Blackwood line without a Moonwarden. He wanted Elizabeth to remain permanently attached to the royal household. Attached, Claire repeated. Miriam's mouth tightened. Elizabeth refused. Claire almost smiled. That sounded like the mother she remembered. Gentle until someone mistook gentleness for surrender. So she left. Queen Eleanor helped her, Miriam said. She arranged new records under the Bennet name and ordered everyone loyal to her to keep Elizabeth's location private. Claire looked at Nathan. Did your father? No. He suspected. Did he search for her? Nathan held her gaze. Yes. The corridor seemed colder. Claire thought of her mother's constant caution, the locked drawer in her bedroom, the way she never allowed photographs containing unfamiliar faces to remain visible. What Claire had once considered privacy now looked like survival by disappearance. And you ended the search when you became king. On my first week. Claire remembered what he had told her in the carriage. Families offering daughters. Women becoming tests. Nathan had inherited more than a throne. He had inherited a system built from fear and had chosen to stop feeding it. Why did nobody tell me after that? Claire asked. Diane answered this time. Because I promised Elizabeth. She asked you to protect me forever? She asked me to let you have an ordinary life. Claire looked toward the portrait. You could have told me who she was without sending me to a palace. Diane's eyes filled with regret, but Claire was too tired to comfort her. Miriam continued down the corridor. The sealed room is this way. They followed through the oldest wing, where the polished floors gave way to darker wood and the electric wall lamps were replaced by small amber sconces. At the end stood a narrow white door with no visible handle. A silver crescent had been set into its center. Claire's pin grew warm against her collar. She stopped. Nathan noticed. What is it? The pin. Claire lifted it between her fingers. It feels warm. Miriam stepped aside. Elizabeth designed the seal herself. I was told never to force it. Claire approached the door. A thin indentation appeared beneath the crescent, exactly the size of her pin. Her breathing slowed. She unclasped the silver piece from her dress and pressed it gently into the opening. A soft click sounded inside the wall. Nothing dramatic followed. No burst of light. The door simply opened 3 inches, releasing the faint scent of cedar and dried lavender. Claire knew that scent. Her mother had kept lavender sachets in every dresser drawer they owned. Claire pushed the door wider. A small room waited beyond, untouched beneath linen covers. Shelves lined one wall. A writing desk faced a circular window. On the desk sat a wooden box and a sealed envelope. Claire crossed the room alone. Her name was written across the envelope in Elizabeth's handwriting. She stopped breathing for a second. Claire. Nathan's voice came softly from the doorway. I am fine. She was not. But she wanted to be the person who opened this without someone deciding for her. Claire broke the seal. The first line made her knees feel weak. My darling Claire, if the Queen's carriage has awakened for you, then the Blackwood heir is carrying the burden I prayed would end with his father. Claire looked toward Nathan. His face had lost all color. She continued. You may be able to quiet his wolf, but remember this before anyone calls it destiny. Your gift gives you the power to help him. It does not give him the right to have you. Claire's eyes burned. Beneath that sentence, Elizabeth had underlined one final warning. Before you decide whether to trust the Blackwood King, ask him what he did on the night he became Alpha. Claire, read the final sentence again. Ask him what he did on the night he became Alpha. The room seemed to contract around those words. Behind her, rain tapped softly against the circular window while the scent of cedar and lavender pulled memories of her mother into a place Claire had never known existed. She folded the letter carefully and turned. Nathan had not moved from the doorway. Miriam and Diane stood farther back in the corridor, but Nathan's expression told Claire that the question belonged to him alone. What happened that night? She asked. His eyes lowered briefly to the letter. My father died. I know that. Then you know the version written in the royal record. Claire waited. Nathan stepped into the room, but stopped several feet from her. The record says King William died unexpectedly, and I inherited his position as Alpha King. And the part my mother wanted me to ask about? His right hand tightened at his side. That night, I opened the Moonwarden archive. Claire glanced toward the shelves. Why? Because my father had ordered another search. Nathan's voice remained steady, but the control beneath it felt different now. He had learned that one surviving Moonwarden might have a daughter. Claire's fingers closed around the letter. Me? Possibly. He did not have your name. But he was looking. Yes. Claire thought of Elizabeth hiding under another surname, while raising a child who knew nothing about royal bloodlines or ancient gifts. What did you do? Nathan met her eyes. I destroyed the active search orders. Claire said nothing. I dismissed the men assigned to locate the remaining families. I sealed the Carriage records. Then I issued a private decree stating that no Omega could be compelled to participate in any Moonwarden inquiry under royal authority. Claire looked toward Miriam. The older woman nodded once. I witnessed the decree. Nathan continued. I did not know your mother was Elizabeth Vale. I did not know whether the surviving daughter even existed. Then why protect someone you had never met? Because I had watched what the search did to people I had met. His answer came without hesitation. Claire remembered Elizabeth's warning. Your gift gives you the power to help him. It does not give him the right to have you. Her mother had not told Claire to distrust every Blackwood. She had given her a question and trusted her to judge the answer herself. Is that when your condition started? Claire asked. Nathan looked at his hand. That same night. Miriam drew a quiet breath. Nathan. He glanced toward her. She deserves the whole truth. Claire appreciated the words, but she wanted them from him. What whole truth? Nathan moved toward the old writing desk. The Blackwood Alpha inherits more than authority. There is an instinct tied to leadership. Usually it settles with maturity. Mine did not. Because there was no Moonwarden? That was my father's theory. Nathan's mouth tightened. I refuse to accept that another person's freedom should become treatment for my problem. Claire studied him. So you have lived with it for 6 years? Yes. While knowing someone like me might stop it. Knowing someone might exist is not the same as having a claim on them. The answer landed quietly. Claire looked down at the letter. For years, Diane had decided what Claire should know because she believed ignorance would protect her. Madeline had decided where Claire belonged because status made her confident enough to assign places to other people. Nathan, strangely, was the first person in this house with enough power to decide Claire's future and the only one refusing to do it. A small sound came from the wooden box on Elizabeth's desk. Claire turned. The silver clasp had released by itself. Miriam stepped closer but did not touch it. Claire lifted the lid. Inside lay a thin journal, a photograph, and another silver crescent. The photograph showed Elizabeth beside Queen Eleanor near the same black royal carriage Claire had entered tonight. Nathan was there too, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, standing beside his mother with a solemn expression. Claire turned the photograph over. Elizabeth had written a date and one sentence across the back. The Queen's seat recognizes balance, never ownership. Claire handed it to Nathan. His thumb rested near his mother's image. For a moment, the Alpha King disappeared behind the face of a son, seeing someone he had lost. She hated formal photographs, he said quietly. Claire looked at Queen Eleanor's smile. My mother did too. Nathan almost smiled. Then his fingers began trembling again. Claire noticed immediately. So did he. Neither moved. She could stop it. They both knew that now. But Nathan did not ask. Claire understood that this was the real test her mother had left behind, not whether magic responded to her, but whether power could stand beside need without turning need into entitlement. She stepped closer and extended her hand. This is my choice. Nathan looked at her palm before placing his hand gently into hers. The trembling stopped. Warmth spread through Claire's fingers, followed by the same deep stillness she had felt inside the carriage. Across the room, silver lines appeared beneath the wooden floor, faint as moonlight underwater. They traveled toward Elizabeth's desk and stopped beneath the journal. Its cover slowly opened to a marked page. Claire released Nathan and leaned closer. One sentence had been underlined in her mother's handwriting. If the Blackwood heir chooses freedom when possession would benefit him, then tell my daughter she may safely learn the final truth. Claire turned the page. Beneath it was a family record bearing Elizabeth Vale's name, followed by Claire's birth entry. Claire read the final notation once, then again. Miriam came beside her and went completely still. Nathan looked over Claire's shoulder. The notation did not call Claire a queen, a Luna, or a destined mate. It named her something older. Claire Bennett, first living Moonwarden keeper born in 23 years. Claire stared at the words until they stopped looking like a title and began feeling like a responsibility. First living Moonwarden keeper born in 23 years. She expected Miriam to explain what she was supposed to feel. Pride, perhaps. Fear. Some sudden certainty that would make the entire night fit neatly together. Instead, Miriam remained silent. Nathan did too. Claire was grateful. What does keeper mean? She finally asked. Miriam moved closer to the desk. It means your mother believed the Moonwarden line continued through you. That sounds like bloodline, not responsibility. Exactly. Claire looked at her. Miriam gave a faint smile. Elizabeth disliked inherited obligations. She believed ability could pass through blood, but duty required consent. Claire lowered her eyes to the record. That sounded like her mother too. Elizabeth had never demanded gratitude for sacrifices Claire had not asked her to make. Even during the hardest years, she had offered choices whenever she could. Strawberry or chocolate birthday cake, piano lessons or soccer, college nearby or 3 states away. Small freedoms, Claire realized now, practiced by a woman who had once escaped a world determined to choose for her. So being keeper does not mean I have to stay here. No, Nathan said. Claire turned toward him. His right hand had begun stiffening again, but he kept it at his side. It does not mean you have to help me either. Diane shifted near the doorway. But if Claire can stabilize the Alpha King, surely that changes things. Claire felt the old pressure return instantly. Nathan's expression cooled. It changes. My condition. It does not change her rights. Diane fell silent. Claire looked at Nathan and understood why Elizabeth's letter had asked that particular question. Her mother had known that character revealed itself most clearly when someone could benefit from taking more than they were entitled to. Nathan needed what Claire could offer, yet every answer he gave placed the choice back into her hands. A knock sounded from the corridor. Commander Grant appeared at the doorway. Your Majesty, the remaining guest coaches have arrived. There is also a council matter. Nathan glanced toward Claire before answering. What matter? Several council members heard about the carriage crest. They are asking whether the old recognition protocol should be invoked. Miriam's face hardened. That protocol should have been abolished. It was suspended, Nathan said. Not abolished. Claire folded her mother's letter. What does it require? Grant hesitated. Nathan answered instead. If the Queen's seat visibly responds to an Omega, the Council may request a formal examination of the claim. Claire stared at him. Examination? Old language. His jaw tightened. And not language I intend to honor. What would they examine? Miriam answered reluctantly. Family records. The carriage response. Your ability to balance the reigning alpha. Claire looked toward Nathan's hand. By asking me to demonstrate it. Yes. The room suddenly felt less like her mother's refuge and more like the beginning of another test. Claire remembered Nathan describing the women who had once sat in the carriage while powerful families waited to see whether they were special enough. She understood now why he had hated it. No, Nathan said. Grant nodded immediately. I will inform them. Claire looked at Nathan. You did not ask me. His expression changed. You are right. Grant stopped. Nathan faced Claire fully. The council has requested an examination. You may refuse it without consequence. Claire considered the difference. Minutes ago, Nathan had protected her by answering for her. It was kindness, but even kindness could become another form of deciding. He had recognized the mistake immediately. That mattered. I refuse, she said. Grant inclined his head. Understood. Madeline's voice came from the corridor. Of course she does. Everyone turned. Madeline stood beyond Diane, still wearing her ivory coat, rainwater darkening its hem. She knows one glowing symbol has already made everyone treat her differently. Why risk proving it was coincidence? Diane whispered her name, but Madeline continued. All evening she pretended she wanted nothing. Now she has the king's private carriage, a sealed royal room, and half the household waiting for her next miracle. Claire felt the words land exactly where Madeline intended. Once they would have made her defend herself. Tonight, she simply looked at her. You still think this is about winning? Madeline's expression tightened. Is that not what you were doing? No. Claire placed the Moonwarden record back on the desk. I am learning who my mother was. While standing beside the Alpha King, Claire glanced at Nathan. He did not move to rescue her from the accusation. Good. She did not need him to. I was standing beside an attendant in the rain before any of this happened, Claire said. You did not notice that because nobody important was watching. Madeline became quiet. Claire continued. You sent me into that carriage because you wanted me embarrassed. I could ask Nathan to punish you. I could probably make tonight very difficult for you. Madeline's face lost color. But I will not. Why? Because then I would still be letting you decide who I become. Silence settled across the room. Claire turned toward Grant. Tell the council I will not be examined. Yes, Miss Bennet. But tell them something else. Nathan watched her carefully. What? Claire touched the crescent pin before fastening it back onto her dress. Tomorrow morning, I will speak to them myself. Not as a candidate for their queen's seat. As Elizabeth Vale's daughter. Miriam's eyes brightened with quiet pride. Nathan said nothing until Grant and Diane had stepped into the corridor and Madeline reluctantly followed. Then he looked at Claire. You know they will challenge you. I know. They may question whether you belong here. Claire looked toward her mother's portrait visible through the open doorway. 23 years ago, Elizabeth had walked away rather than allow a crown to define her life. Tonight, Claire finally understood the inheritance she wanted from her. Not magic. Not status. Choice. Then they can ask, she said. Nathan's expression softened. And what will you tell them? Claire met his eyes. That belonging somewhere and belonging to someone are not the same thing. Before Nathan could answer, the silver crescent on Claire's pin warmed again. Across the room, Elizabeth's journal turned one page in the quiet air, revealing a final sealed document beneath it. Miriam stepped closer and read the faded heading. Her expression changed immediately. Claire, she whispered, your mother did not leave the Moonwardens without naming a successor. Claire looked down. Beneath the seal were 2 lines. The first carried her own name. The second contained a condition. The keeper may stand beside the Blackwood Alpha only after the crown publicly renounces every ancient claim of ownership over the Moonwarden line. Claire read the condition once, then again, while the meaning settled over the room. The crown must publicly renounce every ancient claim of ownership over the Moonwarden line. She expected Nathan to hesitate. The demand reached beyond her, beyond one carriage ride, beyond whatever strange connection existed between them. It asked the king to stand before his own council and reject a privilege his family had preserved for generations. Nathan held out his hand. May I? Claire gave him the document. He read it in silence. Miriam watched his face carefully. There will be resistance, she said. Then they can resist, Nathan replied. Claire studied him. You have not even considered what giving this up might cost you. His eyes lifted from the page. There is nothing here I have the right to keep. The simplicity of his answer unsettled her more than a grand declaration would have. The old law may give the crown authority over Moonwarden service. A law can be legal and still be wrong. Claire felt her mother's letter against her palm. Your father would not have agreed. I have spent 6 years proving I am not my father. Nathan placed the document carefully on the desk. Tomorrow, I will repeal the claim before the council. Miriam shook her head. You cannot repeal an ancestral covenant with a sentence. The original register must be brought from the council archive, the claim read publicly, and the reigning alpha must surrender the royal seal attached to it. Nathan looked almost relieved to have practical instructions. Then have the register brought here tonight. Nathan, Miriam said gently. The seal also protects the crown's right to request Moonwarden assistance during an alpha crisis. Claire looked toward his hand. The stiffness had returned, more visible now. He curled his fingers once, then stopped trying to hide it. If he surrendered the claim, he would also surrender the only legal mechanism that could ever require Claire to help him. Nathan glanced at his hand and then at her. Good. One word. No performance. No pause. Claire's throat tightened unexpectedly. You could need me someday. Need is not ownership. What if your condition becomes worse? Then I will ask. And if I say no? Nathan met her eyes. Then the answer is no. The room became very quiet. Claire understood why her mother had written the condition instead of simply destroying the document herself. Elizabeth had wanted the next Blackwood ruler to make the choice where witnesses could see it. Private kindness could be sincere. Public surrender changed systems. A soft knock came from the doorway. Grant returned carrying a message sealed in dark blue wax. The council has heard Miss Bennet intends to address them tomorrow. They are requesting an emergency session tonight. Nathan took the message but did not open it. How many are here? 9 council members. The rest cannot reach the residence until the roads reopen. Enough for a provisional hearing. Grant nodded. They are gathering in the East Chamber. Claire felt exhaustion settle into her shoulders. It had been hours since she entered the wrong carriage, yet the life she had known before that mistake already felt distant. Tomorrow would be easier, Nathan said. I can make them wait. Claire looked at Elizabeth's portrait through the doorway. Her mother had waited 23 years for this room to open. Claire suddenly did not want one more night of other people wondering whether she could be tested, claimed, assigned, or measured. No, tonight. Nathan searched her expression. Are you certain? Yes. Miriam reached for the old document. Then this goes with us. They crossed the residence toward the East Chamber. Diane waited near the staircase, but Claire did not stop. Madeline stood beside her, unusually quiet. As Claire passed, Madeline spoke softly. They will not welcome you. Claire turned. There was no mockery in Madeline's face this time. Only warning. I am not asking them to. Claire continued beside Nathan. At the entrance to the East Chamber, 2 attendants opened tall wooden doors. 9 council members rose from a long table. Their attention moved first to Nathan, then immediately to Claire. An older councilman with silver hair frowned at the crescent pin on her dress. Your Majesty, we were informed the Moonwarden keeper has been identified. Nathan did not answer. Claire did. My name is Claire Bennet. The councilman looked surprised. If the record is authentic, Miss Bennet, your family owes an ancient service to the Blackwood crown. Claire felt Nathan become still beside her. She touched her mother's pin. That is exactly why we are here. Miriam placed the document on the table. Nathan stepped forward. Bring me the original covenant. Another council member stood. Your Majesty, before any decision is made, the keeper should demonstrate that the Carriage response was genuine. No, Nathan said. Then how can the council protect the crown from a false claim? Claire looked directly at the man. I am not making a claim. Confusion crossed several faces. I did not come here asking to become queen. I did not ask for royal status. I am here because your laws claim authority over my family. The silver-haired councilman turned toward Nathan. And what does your Majesty intend to do? Grant entered carrying a heavy leather-bound register and placed it before the king. Nathan opened the ancient book, found the page. Miriam indicated, and removed a blackened silver seal attached by a faded ribbon. Claire saw several council members rise in alarm. Nathan held the seal in his palm. I intend to return something the Blackwood crown should never have possessed. He placed the seal on the table in front of Claire. From this night forward, no Moonwarden owes service, proximity, loyalty, or healing to this crown by birth. The room erupted into overlapping objections, but Claire barely heard them. The crescent pin against her collar had begun to warm. Across the table, silver light appeared beneath the old covenant, spreading through the faded ink until one hidden sentence emerged at the bottom of the page. Miriam leaned forward and read it aloud. When the crown releases the keeper freely, the queen's seat may reveal whether the bond itself was ever about service. Every voice stopped. Nathan looked at Claire. Claire looked toward the rain-dark windows, where the royal carriage waited somewhere beyond the glass. Then the distant silver wolf crest began to glow. The glow outside was bright enough to reach the East Chamber windows. For several seconds, nobody moved. Claire watched silver light ripple across the rain-streaked glass while the council members stared toward the courtyard as though an old story had suddenly stepped into the present. Nathan remained beside the table, his hand empty now that the royal seal lay before Claire. "What happens next?" she asked. Miriam looked at the newly revealed sentence in the covenant. "I do not know." The silver-haired councilman recovered first. "Your Majesty, surrendering the seal without a full council vote is unprecedented." Nathan looked at him. So was claiming generations of Omegas as inherited royal resources. The covenant protected both houses. Did the Moonwardens have the right to refuse? Silence answered. Nathan's voice stayed calm. Then it protected only one. Claire looked at him. He had not raised his voice once, yet the room had rearranged itself around the certainty in it. Another councilwoman leaned toward the register. "The hidden clause mentions the Queen's seat. If the old records are correct, perhaps the carriage must be consulted." Claire almost laughed from exhaustion. Consulted? Miriam gave her an apologetic look. Old magic was rarely written in practical language. Apparently. Nathan glanced toward Claire. "You do not have to go near it again." The councilman frowned. "Your Majesty, surely now that the crown has relinquished its claim, the keeper should complete the recognition." Claire felt the familiar shape of expectation returning, only dressed in older words. Should. Duty. Recognition. Nathan opened his mouth, but Claire spoke first. "I will go." He turned toward her. "Because they asked?" "No." Claire touched the crescent pin. "Because I want to know what my mother was trying to protect me long enough to choose." That answer seemed to satisfy him. Not the council. Him. They crossed the residence together, with Miriam, Grant, and the council following at a respectful distance. Diane and Madeline waited near the entrance hall. Madeline looked toward the courtyard, where silver light surrounded the old carriage beneath the covered drive. "What is happening?" she asked. Claire stopped. The crown released the Moonwarden claim. Diane's hand rose to her mouth. Madeline stared at Nathan. "You gave it up?" "It was never mine." Madeline looked at Claire then, and something complicated passed across her face. Envy was still there, but it had lost its certainty. "So what are you now?" she asked. Claire considered the question. Still Claire. She walked outside. The rain had softened to a fine mist. The carriage stood beneath golden lamps, blackwood polished almost mirror-dark, while the silver wolf on its door glowed steadily. Grant opened the door. Claire saw the seat where the entire night had begun. It looked ordinary again, except for the crescent faintly visible in the panel behind it. Nathan remained outside. "Are you coming?" Claire asked. "The clause refers to the keeper. It also refers to the crown. That does not mean you need me inside." Claire understood what he was doing. Even now, he would rather risk missing an answer than assume her invitation. "I am asking you." Nathan held her gaze, then entered after her. Claire sat in the same place. As before, Nathan chose the opposite seat this time, leaving several feet between them. Nothing happened. Outside, the council waited. Claire looked at the crescent. "Maybe we misunderstood." Nathan's right hand tightened against his knee. The tremor was stronger after the long evening. Claire watched him try to hide it. "You can ask," she said. His eyes met hers. "Ask what?" "For help." Nathan was silent for a moment. "Will you help me?" Claire smiled faintly. "Yes." She moved across the carriage and sat beside him. Their shoulders did not touch. She extended her hand between them. Nathan looked at it before placing his palm against hers. The effect was immediate. His fingers relaxed. His breathing slowed. But this time the silver wolf did not merely glow. A line of pale light traveled from the crest across the carriage wall and circled both seats. The crescent behind Claire appeared, followed by a second symbol beside it, an open hand beneath a wolf. Miriam gasped outside. Letters emerged slowly beneath the symbols, carved into wood that had appeared blank moments before. Claire read them aloud. "Balance cannot be inherited. It cannot be commanded. It exists only where power asks and freedom answers." Nathan's hand remained still in hers. Claire felt tears sting her eyes, not because the carriage had chosen her, but because Elizabeth had been right. The old bond had never been ownership. People had turned it into ownership. Nathan looked at the inscription for a long time. My family misunderstood this for generations. Some of them may have preferred misunderstanding it. Probably. Claire looked at him. And now we make sure nobody can misunderstand it again. Outside, the council members had gone completely silent. Nathan released Claire's hand first, giving the choice back even after she had already offered it. Then he stepped from the carriage and faced them. Tomorrow, The covenant will be permanently repealed before the full council. The Moonwarden records will be restored without any royal claim attached to them. The silver-haired councilman lowered his head. One by one, the others followed. Claire stepped down without taking Nathan's hand. She wanted to feel the ground beneath her own feet. Madeline stood near the entrance watching. Her eyes moved from Claire to the carriage inscription. "I thought that seat would prove you did not belong," she said quietly. Claire looked at her. "It did prove something." Madeline waited. Claire touched her mother's crescent. "That nobody gets to decide where I belong before I do." She turned toward the residence. Then Grant called from behind them. "Your Majesty." Everyone stopped. He was staring inside the carriage. The blackwood panel beneath the Queen's seat had opened, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside rested a small velvet case that had apparently remained hidden for decades. Miriam approached and lifted it carefully. On the lid were 2 handwritten words in Queen Eleanor's faded script. "For Nathan." Nathan opened the case. Inside was a letter from his mother and a second silver seal, unlike the one he had just surrendered. Miriam recognized it immediately. "The equal seal," she whispered. Nathan looked confused. That title was abolished centuries ago. Miriam turned toward Claire, then back to him. "Not abolished. Hidden." The old Blackwood law did not name the Moonwarden beside the Alpha as servant, healer, or Luna. Claire felt the courtyard become silent again. Then what did it call her? Miriam unfolded Queen Eleanor's letter. Her eyes widened as she read the first line. "The one person before whom the Alpha King must stand without rank." The words remained in the courtyard long after Miriam stopped speaking. The one person before whom the Alpha King must stand without rank. Claire looked at Nathan, expecting disbelief, perhaps even discomfort. Instead, he stared at the second silver seal in his hand as though his mother had reached across the years and placed one final lesson there. "Read the rest," he said. Miriam unfolded the letter completely. "The equal is neither subject nor possession. The equal carries no obligation to serve the crown and receives no authority merely by standing beside it. The title exists for one purpose: to remind the Alpha that power without a willing counterweight eventually mistakes obedience for loyalty." Nathan closed his eyes briefly. Claire thought of everything he had told her about his father. Suddenly, the hidden title made painful sense. King William had preserved the part of the Moonwarden tradition that benefited the crown and buried the part that limited it. "My mother knew," Nathan said. Miriam nodded. "She must have discovered the original law before she died." Claire looked toward the carriage. "And she hid the seal there because your father would have destroyed it." "Most likely." Nathan turned the silver piece over in his palm. There was a wolf engraved on one side and an open hand on the other. No crown, no throne, nothing suggesting ownership. The council members stood beneath the covered entrance, their earlier certainty replaced by unease. The silver-haired councilman finally spoke. "If the equal seal is authentic, the implications for Blackwood law are substantial." Claire almost smiled. "That sounds like a polite way of saying inconvenient." Miriam's mouth twitched. Nathan did not hide his faint smile. "It is extremely inconvenient," he said, "which is probably why my father buried it." The councilman cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, restoring such a title could place an unelected individual beside the crown with extraordinary influence." Nathan looked at Claire. "Only if she accepts it." Claire felt every eye return to her. There it was again, the moment when an entire room seemed ready to turn an old discovery into a decision about her future. This time she did not feel small beneath their attention. "What happens if I refuse?" she asked. Miriam answered, "Nothing. The title remains vacant. And Nathan remains king." "His condition?" Miriam hesitated. "Unchanged, unless you voluntarily choose to help him." Claire nodded slowly. "Then nothing needs to be decided tonight." Several council members exchanged glances. One of them began to object, but Nathan raised a hand. "Miss Bennet has answered." The councilman looked dissatisfied. "The stability of the crown is not a private concern." "Correct," Nathan said, "which is why the crown will develop a solution that does not depend upon controlling one woman's life." Claire looked at him. Again, he had chosen the harder answer without making it sound heroic. Dawn was still hours away, yet she felt as if she had lived several days since entering the carriage. Miriam folded Queen Eleanor's letter and handed it to Nathan. "There is one more matter." She looked toward Diane and Madeline. "The circumstances that placed Claire in the carriage." Madeline lowered her eyes. Diane stepped forward. Madeline has admitted what she did. Nathan's expression became unreadable. I heard enough earlier. Madeline looked toward Claire. I was wrong. The apology came awkwardly, stripped of the polished confidence Claire had known for years. I wanted you embarrassed. I thought if you made a mistake publicly, people would stop looking past me towards someone they considered beneath me. Claire blinked. Nobody was looking at me. That was the point. Madeline swallowed. I needed you to stay invisible. Claire understood then that Madeline's cruelty had never been proof of Claire's insignificance. It had been evidence that Madeline had noticed her all along. I am not asking you to forgive me, Madeline said. Good, Claire replied softly. Because forgiveness is not something you ask for before the other person has had time to decide what your apology means. Madeline nodded. Nathan looked toward Grant. There will be no royal punishment requested by Miss Bennet. Claire glanced at him. He corrected himself immediately. Unless she chooses otherwise. I do not. Nathan nodded. Then Miss Royce will answer only for violating Carriage security protocol. Commander Hayes will handle it according to ordinary rules. Ordinary rules. Not vengeance. Not humiliation. Claire felt something loosen inside her. She had spent years imagining justice as the moment someone powerful finally made cruel people feel small. Tonight she understood that justice could be quieter. It could simply mean the rules stopped changing depending on who had status. Diane approached her cautiously. Claire, when this is finished, you can still come home. Claire looked at the woman who had raised her, protected her, and hidden too much from her. Love and disappointment could exist in the same place. She was beginning to understand that too. I know. Diane's eyes softened. Will you? Claire looked through the open doors toward the dark road beyond the estate. Not tonight. Diane nodded, accepting an answer she might once have challenged. Miriam offered Claire the sealed Moonwarden room for the night, but Claire asked instead for a simple guest room. She wanted no symbols, no ancient titles, no expectations. Hours later, as the rain finally stopped, Claire stood alone on a small balcony overlooking the courtyard. The royal carriage remained below. Nathan appeared at the neighboring doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee. I was told Americans solve complicated nights with this, he said. Claire accepted one. Sometimes we add pie. I will inform the kitchen. She laughed quietly. They stood several feet apart, watching clouds move away from the moon. Nathan's right hand trembled around his cup. Claire noticed. He noticed her noticing. He still did not ask. You are terrible at requesting help, she said. I am learning. Claire extended her free hand. Then practice. Nathan looked at her. Claire, will you help me? Yes. She placed her hand in his. The trembling eased. No council watched. No carriage glowed. Nothing declared destiny. There was only a choice made in quiet darkness. Nathan looked down at their hands, then released hers before she needed to. Thank you. Claire leaned against the balcony rail. What happens tomorrow? The covenant is repealed publicly. Your mother's records are restored. The equal seal is entered into the archive. And me? Nathan looked toward her. You decide. Claire smiled faintly. You really like that answer. I am beginning to. Morning light had just started touching the distant trees when bells sounded from the main hall. Miriam stepped onto the balcony behind them, holding Queen Eleanor's letter. There is a final instruction, she said. Nathan sighed softly. Of course there is. Miriam smiled. This one is simple. When the covenant is repealed, the queen's seat must be offered back to the keeper in front of the full court. Claire frowned. Offered, not assigned. Miriam looked at Nathan. The king cannot. Ask her to sit. Nathan understood first. She has to choose. Miriam nodded. And if she does, the person who sits beside her must surrender every title for the duration of the journey. Claire looked toward the black carriage below. The same seat she had entered by mistake would be waiting for her again, except this time nobody could tell her whether she belonged there. Nathan followed her gaze. Then tomorrow, he said quietly, I suppose the seat is yours to refuse. By noon, the rain was gone, and sunlight lay across the Blackwood courtyard as if the storm had never happened. Claire stood beneath the covered entrance wearing the same gray dress from the night before. Miriam had offered her something more formal, but Claire had declined. She wanted to walk into the morning as herself, not as someone's idea of what a Moonwarden keeper should look like. Her mother's silver crescent rested at her collar. Beyond the steps, the full council had assembled with representatives from the oldest pack families. Diane stood quietly near the back. Madeline remained beside her, subdued and watchful. Commander Grant waited near the royal carriage. Nathan stood before the council with the ancient covenant open on a table. He wore no ceremonial crown. Claire was glad. What happened next needed fewer symbols of power, not more. Nathan placed the old royal seal beside the covenant. For generations, the Blackwood crown claimed the right to summon Moonwardens because of their birth, he said. His voice carried easily across the courtyard. That claim ends today. No Omega, Moonwarden, or member of any bloodline owes this crown service, healing, loyalty, proximity, or companionship without freely given consent. No one interrupted. Nathan removed the faded ribbon from the register and handed the seal to Miriam for preservation as a historical artifact rather than an instrument of authority. The silver crescent at Claire's collar warmed. She looked toward the carriage. Its door stood open. The black leather seat waited inside. Yesterday, she had entered it because someone deceived her. Then she had remained because a king told her to stay. Today, nobody spoke. Grant stepped away. From the carriage, Nathan did not approach it. Claire understood. This was the choice her mother had protected for 23 years. She walked across the courtyard. Her shoes sounded softly against the dry stone. Every eye followed her, but for once she did not adjust her posture to become smaller beneath their attention. She reached the carriage and stopped. The silver wolf on the door remained dark. Claire almost smiled. Even the old magic seemed willing to wait. She climbed inside and sat in the queen's seat. Silver light appeared instantly beneath her hand, warm and quiet, tracing the wolf before traveling toward the hidden crescent behind her. A murmur moved through the courtyard. Claire ignored it. She looked through the open door at Nathan. He still had not moved. "Are you planning to stand there all afternoon?" she asked. A faint smile touched his face. "I was specifically instructed not to ask." "You are not asking." "No." Claire remembered Miriam's final instruction. Anyone who joined the Keeper for this journey surrendered rank until the carriage returned. Inside those walls, Nathan would not be your majesty. Not Alpha King. Not the most powerful man in Blackwood territory. Just Nathan. Claire extended her hand. "Would you like to come with me?" Something shifted in his expression. It was not triumph. It looked almost like relief. Nathan crossed the courtyard, but when he reached the carriage, he did not take Claire's hand immediately. "Are you certain?" Yesterday, that question might have frightened her. Today, it made the answer easier. "Yes." He placed his hand in hers and entered. His fingers relaxed before he even sat down. Nathan chose the place beside her. The carriage door remained open. Outside, the council watched as the second silver seal began glowing in Miriam's hands. The equal seal answered the crescent behind Claire, and the inscription inside the carriage appeared once more. Balance cannot be inherited. It cannot be commanded. It exists only where power asks and freedom answers. Nathan looked at the words. "Your mother understood this better than my family did." Claire touched the crescent at her collar. "She gave us enough time to understand it ourselves." Nathan glanced toward her. "Us." Claire felt warmth rise into her face, but she did not look away. "Do not make too much of one word." His quiet laugh surprised her. It was the first sound she had heard from him that carried no burden at all. Outside, Grant closed the carriage door. The courtyard disappeared. For several seconds, Claire and Nathan simply sat beside each other. No council, no ceremony, no ancient law telling them what the moment had to become. "Where are we going?" Claire asked. "That depends." "On what?" "You." Claire shook her head. "You are taking this freedom thing very seriously. I have had an educational 24 hours. She smiled. "Take the North Road." "Why?" "There is a diner about 15 miles from here. My mother used to take me there for pancakes." Nathan stared at her. The Moonwarden Keeper's first official journey with the Blackwood Alpha King is for pancakes. You surrendered your title when you entered this carriage. Right? Then Nathan would very much like pancakes. Claire laughed, and the carriage began moving. When they returned 2 hours later, Diane was waiting near the entrance. Claire stepped down first. Diane approached carefully. "Are you coming home?" Claire looked toward the road, then at the residence behind her. "Eventually. But I need some time to decide what home means now." Diane nodded. "I understand." Claire believed she was beginning to. Madeline stood farther away. Their eyes met. Madeline offered a small, uncertain nod. Claire returned it. Not forgiveness yet. Perhaps someday. Nathan stepped from the carriage last. His hand was steady. He stopped beside Claire without reaching for her. "What happens now?" he asked. Claire looked at him and understood the quiet beauty of the question. The most powerful man she had ever met was waiting for an answer instead of giving one. Claire offered her hand. Nathan took it. The silver wolf behind them glowed softly, but neither turned to look. They did not need an ancient carriage to tell them what the moment meant. Claire had entered that seat believing she had made a humiliating mistake. She left it knowing something her mother had spent a lifetime protecting. Dignity was not a gift granted by kings. Destiny was not permission to possess another person, and love, if it ever came, would have to arrive as a choice made freely by two people standing on equal ground. Thank you so much for watching this story to the end. If Claire and Nathan's journey touched your heart, tell us in the comments what choice you would have made in Claire's place. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and help us bring you more stories where kindness becomes strength, dignity survives prejudice, and even the most powerful heart learns that loyalty can never be commanded, only earned.